diabetes is rampant in indigenous communities. So it's really a way of transforming the way we eat, we think, and the way we acquire food, and that's where it begins. So today I just wanted to briefly talk about those 3 moments in time, and of course there's many, but this is kind of how we're putting it, how I've organized it, where really these 3 moments have altered and shaped our bodies inside and out, how they transformed our landscapes, our spiritual and cultural connections to the food and to the landscape has changed. So I want to begin with that Colombian exchange. When we talk about the first Europeans arriving, we know, the conquest stories, we know all of these things, but we hardly pay attention to the food and how that really transformed us. You talk about how it was justified to take over land, how it was to dehumanize indigenous peoples in order for that. It was justified. But it was also equally dehumanized and demonized our food. Our food was that. The things we used to eat, the way we used to prepare things, it was also viewed as barbaric and savage. So in order to do that, they had to transform everything. They had to transform our diet, our landscape, and our connection to that. By introducing new foods, introducing new methods of farming, and we all know, as indigenous peoples, we had our own methods, our own way of thinking. But it had to transform because you had to convert in one shape or another. So transforming the landscape was first. You had to bring cattle, you had to bring that. So these lush, beautiful forests we had become, barren deserts. Cattle was one of those very important transformations in our landscape. The introduction of new foods. Wheat is the biggest, really trying to replace our connection to corn, maíz, haba. It has so many names, it has so many meanings and spiritual connections to people. So that was one of the major, I think, first major impacts of change. The next one kind of refers more into modern history with the Green Revolution, which I'm sure many of you are all aware of the Green Revolution. But how many, show of hands, knows where the cradle of the Green Revolution was? Yeah, it was right in our pretty much backyard, right? Rio Yaqui in Sonora, Mexico. And that's where it begins. So this is why it's so important for us, for our communities, for our people to understand that impact of food and how it has changed. The Green Revolution, as we know, was a global process to address this exponential growth of population in the 30s, 40s, and 50s. It was experimented in Mexico, some say successfully, we can debate that, India, and many other countries. But right here, just across the border, Sonora, that was the cradle, and that's probably the success model that's usually used, right? But what did it mean? What did it mean for our people? What did it mean to our communities? It was increased monocrops. Wheat is the biggest, it still is. We talk about land policy. Of course, there was war. You might have all heard of all the wars that happened to our indigenous people, Yaqui, Pima, Atham, all of those communities were affected by this Green Revolution. And of course, we have the appropriation of the land in order to make this happen. Taking away water resources, as it's still an impact today. But the Green Revolution brought 3 things. It brought pesticides. It brought how, and when to plant, harvest. So what did that do for us? So now we only can plant what they tell us, what the government tells us. We can only do it when they tell us to do it. Because otherwise we won't be able to have, any type of programs to help. And when you talk about a country who economically is not, in its greatest shape, you're going to take what the government's going to give you. So unfortunately for all of our communities, this transformed. And it transformed because not only did it take away land, it not only did it dictate what to do, but it also made the neighboring farming a commercialized, large farming sector, almost impossible to compete. So now you become a farm worker in your own land. You can't even afford to do that on your own. Pesticides, you still use these horrible pesticides that are banned pretty much everywhere else, especially here, DDT, all of these other pesticides that are still used today. I mean, you have people working in the fields with no type of protective gear, on their backs with these huge containers and, being littered everywhere in the land. There's no proper disposal. There's all of these things that affect. So we have high number of disease, cancer, malformations, all of these things, malnutrition, because of all of these effects of the Green Revolution. That is still ongoing. Of course, the Mexican government will not necessarily acknowledge any of that, because you outweigh the good, which is, of course, the economic production of wheat. There's